Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Nusha Jafari, and I'm here with Irfan going over chapter 4. Today is going to be our first day going over chapter 4, and it's a chapter about from 1 to many and many to 1. We're going to start with the section 1, an arbitrary amount of information as data. Irfan, we're going to learn about array lists today. Are you ready for it?
Let's do it. I'm very interested in it.
Excellent. Okay, so let's say Tarone. Let's actually change the color first. Perfect. Let's say Tarone wants to figure out how much she's eating in a day to give her doctor a list of food that she has. So she wants to see what food she has. If you remember, the way that we have started this is we have a class person, and in the class person, we have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right?
Exactly.
Okay. But if you remember this, we have it as a single item of food. So we're assuming that you just have an apple for breakfast, you have some bread for lunch, and you have like a steak for dinner, let's say. Is there a problem with this?
So I think we cannot uh, put more data in the fields in this way.
Yeah, so the problem right now is that the information we're trying to represent, it's more than one piece of food, and we are only able to get one piece in this. So instead, we could try it some other way. What other ways could we have the data?
Should we make different classes, or are we talking about this class only?
So yeah, one idea is to have a different classes. So for example, instead of the class person having a food item, the class person can have instead a meal item. So let's say we do something like this, where um, we have meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in the meal class, we can have, um, food, meal one, meal two, and so forth, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's one idea. And let's say, how many meals should we have? Or food,
Like
how many foods
10.
should we have? What's that?
Um, I think there's just one food and like 10 different types of food.
Okay, so let's say you have up to food 10, right?
Yes.
Okay, so do you see a problem with this method? So essentially, what we're having is that we're saying there is a person which has a meal which has 10 food items. So the 10 food items, a meal has 10 foods, and a person has 3 meals. Right? This is essentially what our strategy is right now.
Right.
Okay, what's the issue with this? Do you see any problems with this?
Mm, I don't think so. What is the problem with this?
So, one problem is that this assumes that a meal is up to 10 foods. First of all, what if you have less than 10? What happens if you have just, um, you know, 3 items of food? And secondly, what will you be able to do if you have more than 10 items of food? Let's say if it's like a very elaborate dinner, you had appetizers, you had um, the meal, dessert, everything.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, so that's one thing. What's another problem with this? Do you see any other problem?
I don't.
Okay, so one other problem here is that we're assuming these meal classes. What if Tarane has a snack, like between lunch and dinner, or between breakfast and lunch? So it's assuming that you just have 3 meals and that's it.
Yes.
Okay. Instead of this diagram over here, this person diagram with meals and 10 foods, what do we actually want? What do we actually want the person to have?
To have arbitrary meals and arbitrary amount of food.
Yeah, so if we can have an arbitrary amount of food, we don't really need the meal section, right? So we can get rid of the meal and we can just say food. And it could be 1 through n. It's an arbitrary amount. So a person essentially just has a list of food per day, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't want this design, we want this design. All right, how do we do this? So if you remember, we have our class person, and it has a name and, all the other shenanigans. Instead of food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we're going to get rid of that. And instead, we're going to have a list of food. Okay? How do we show a list? Well, they're called array lists. Array list. You need to say what kind of a list is it going to be. Is it going to be a list of names? Is it going to be a list of numbers? Is it going to be a list of what?
It's gonna be a list of names.
Are you sure it's going to be a list of names?
It's gonna be names of the food, isn't it?
No, it's going to be the food class itself, right? We're representing food as a class of food. We're not just going to represent it as a class of names. The food.
Oh, so anyway, have the food class.
Yes, we're definitely going to have the food class because the food class has the name of the food. It has the calorie count. It has a bunch of other methods like, convert calorie percent, daily percent, all these things. So we can't get rid of the way we're representing food. That still exists. We just got rid of the meal class, which was just essentially a list of 10 foods. Right?
Right, yeah.
Okay. So, what is this array list going to be? It's going to be a list of what?
A class?
Class of what?
I don't know.
So, it's going to be a class of food, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be a list of food, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we write food here and we give it a name. It can be foods. It has to have an S because it's a list of foods. And I believe we're missing the parentheses here. So this is really important for you to understand. Let's just go back a little bit to understand everything. So remember, the purpose of programming is to represent information as data, right?
Right.
So we have simple information like a number or a word, okay? And we know that this can be represented to data as either int or double or a string for word, right?
Right.
What else do we have as information?
Number, word.
There's a true and false values, which will be booleans, right?
Right.
What else? What did we say we use for anything more complex than this?
We use a class.
Exactly. So these are all the simple things. This is the complex thing. So class, well, actually, it's a data that's class. The information will be more complex. Okay, so we decided that food is a complex thing. A food cannot be represented just as a number or just as a word because it has both a word and also a number, right?
Right.
Okay, so this is so far what we've learned in the first two chapters. Now we're saying we can have an arbitrary amount of these information. So a list of information. Okay? And we're going to represent it as array list of whatever information type. So for example, if I want to have a list of student names, what should this be?
There should be class students, for example, let's say, and array list students.
So if I want to have an information of all the students, then yes, it would be an array list of student. But if it's just their names, what if it's just their names?
It's a string.
Exactly. So it will be an array list of string. If it is a list of students, then just like you said, I'll get rid of the names and I'll get rid of the string, and it's going to be an array list of class student. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
Excellent. So now we're going back to the class person. We got rid of the food items, so we're going to have an array list of food, and it's going to be called foods. Okay? And
Okay.
the comment is going to be list of foods this person had today, let's say. And in our constructor, we're just going to add the foods in the constructor, right?
Right.
And that's it. That's lists. Are you ready for the homework?
Not actually yet, because
Okay.
I'm not sure if I understood it or not. So, what does this do actually? So, there is a.
Great question.
I don't quite get it.
Okay, great question. So what this does is that now Tarone, for example, can be represented like this. She can be new person with her name, height, weight, all that stuff. And then a list of foods. Okay.
Okay.
And the foods is actually an array list of foods, and it's going to be a new array list, and we can have strawberry, blueberry, what other food are there? Steak. And to initiate these, it would be food, new food, strawberry. I think the calories of strawberry is really low, like something like 9, let's say. And I think that's all we need for gets blueberry, and steak gets steak.
So we can choose any food that we want from that list.
Exactly. So technically, the way you would do it is you would first initialize the foods, okay? Then after that, you would say array list of foods gets new array list, and you would pass in these items or whatever you want. So let's say you had a steak and blueberry but not the strawberry, you would pass in ST and BL, let's say.
Oh, now it makes sense.
Right? Okay. So now that you have this list of foods, now you can make a new person with the name, age, height, weight, whatever, and this as their foods.
Okay. Yeah.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
Perfect. We'll learn more about what this list can actually do and what we can have access to and everything, but this is the main bit. All right, are you ready for the homework?
Yes, let's do them.
Excellent. So, homework. So, I want you to create a student class, and I want it to have a name and also a list of courses. And the courses, are whatever courses that you think are reasonable. And then I want you to instantiate the class with yourself. So make an example of student with a list of the courses that you wish. Okay? And
okay.
The courses that you wish you could take, it should also include the grades that you think you would get. Okay?
Sure.
And the list cannot be empty. It should be a non-empty list. Got it?
What do you mean non-empty list?
Like an empty list would just be a list of nothing, right?
Yes.
A non-empty list is a list that has at least one item. Right?
I suppose we have to put in the courses in the list anyway, right?
Yeah, so I'm saying the example that you make you should have at least one course in your list.
Okay.
Because, like, for example, here in the foods, you could have a empty list. You could have just a new array list, and then that's it, right? And then this would just represent that Tarane didn't have any food. Like, she had an empty list for foods.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Okay, great. Question 2. So the Disney character Mulan, are you familiar with her?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. She's going to travel to New York City for a few days with her dragon Mushu. Are you familiar with him?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, Mushu is the funny dragon in Mulan's movie. Mulan wants to go to museums and historical sites, but Mushu wants to go on a ferry to the Liberty Island. So what we want is to create a trip class and with a list of possible activities. Okay?
Okay.
And in the possible activities, it should include their estimated duration and their cost, and also who suggested them. So if it was Mushu or Mulan. Okay?
Yes, makes sense.
Okay, create an example, instantiate their New York City trip. Make sense?
All right. Yes, it does.
Perfect. All right, have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.